And you know that if you've been within a 20-mile radius of this guy, you know of his gracious spirit, his enthusiasm, and undoubtedly his skill with the harmonica. Larry is larger than life. His personality and character make him one of the most approachable and giving people I've ever met in photography. And when you think about his photography, it's very much like him, of him, in that it is unmistakably unique. A photograph by Larry Fink is unmistakably a Larry Fink photograph, held in a space where the spectacle of humanity plays out like classical theater. Larry directs a reality show where the serendipity of chance as an exhibit of arrested ballet, should they be considered as performance art or both? Because as much as his work may be about him, it's really about us. Because we're all characters in his drama, or we should be. You can stand back and you can find yourself in them. You can find yourself in these photographs. Are you the interloper in the background, rendered frozen by this strobe, the boxer, the model, the musician, the politician, or simply the disaffected passerby that frames that moment? Larry doesn't so much paint with light as he shouts with it, directing you to feel the shadows and hear the sheen and smell the air. Larry Fink takes 2 dimensions and turns them into 3, or is it 4? Please welcome Larry Fink.
I'm not an art historian or critic, and I'm not a photographer. I'm going to need to rely on and draw from a conversation that is in substance already underway. It's ongoing. One that began just a little less than a year ago when Larry and I met in New York City to make a picture of our own. And so it is my hope that in making that conversation here, a conversation about concrete technique and experience and whatever it is we call vision, that Larry and I will be able to come to what I believe are the real subjects of his work, to empathy, trust, and love. Now, Larry, I was your subject. It was an assignment. And the idea, if I have things right, was for you to show up at my apartment in Brooklyn and make one of those personal statement pictures of the artist at home, you know, or maybe in the study, confident and at ease and in place. But that's not what happened. Do you want to just describe that?
Well, first of all, I have to say that Kathy Ryan and Clinton Cargill gave me the assignment. Mm-hmm. And I was thankful. I hadn't worked for the Times Magazine for 150,000 years, and I'm old. And so I said, terrific. And so I hadn't read your work before, so I hurried and scurried and got the short story book, which had just come out, which was going to be written about, amongst other things, and was just astounded by your perceptions and by your language. And so I was thrilled to meet you. And then when I had a conversation with Kathy and Clinton, they said, well, you have to go to his home. That's where writers really live. You have to make a personal picture. We don't want anything impersonal. And I said, have you ever seen an impersonal picture that I've made? I'll do what I please, thank you.
And Larry asked me then to bring someone with me. He asked me if I would bring someone with whom I'd had some kind of intimate connection or contact. And I had just gone through an ending of something, and the person I brought was somebody who I'd known for some years, and we were getting to know each other again after a long period of time. And so we got dressed up because we didn't really know what else to do.
I know, and it was amazing because it was at Bryant Park in the New York City Library System in 42nd Street. I didn't know what he looked like, and I don't think he knew what I looked like. And all of a sudden, here's this tall and presentable guy with a bow tie coming along. I said, Donald. He said, Larry. And out of 150,000 people that were all masquerading as population, we occurred. And it was love at first sight.
Well,
and you know that love is hard work.
Yeah, I wasn't sure. You know, I've been photographed before, but this is something I want to talk about too with Larry. It's a very different kind of experience.
With you, it's a different story than most people when I would photograph this, as it were, photo op. Because I felt what you were just saying, the idea of being some sort of a privilege, not necessarily high and mighty, but you had known my work and you had known that it was a perceptive work and that you wanted to give yourself to it.
Yeah, and I did want to do that.
Yeah, it was very clear. You wanted to give yourself
Yeah.
to a relationship that we might have, or just if simply that moment, to a relationship to, if you will, eternity. Insofar that you trusted me to be able to code your subjective magnitude in such a way that it might take on a kind of an importance which was beyond your own flesh. And I could feel that. And I could feel also the fear, which that contains.
Yeah.
So you gave, and at the same time you retracted,
Yeah, it's very centering and destabilizing simultaneously.
that type of thing. And so it was kind of an amazing thing because I
Right.
liked you, but I could just feel my hand in the camera and the moments merging into some kind of wonderful kind of maze, which clarity takes as a form when it's forming itself. We were learning to learn about what it meant to learn about.
You've been making pictures for close to half a century.
No more.
More, right? And so for many of those years, society parties in the city and in the Hamptons were something of a regular job. And I think that people may be familiar, or probably familiar with those pictures, right? But before that, before all the parties, you made a body of work that we're here tonight to celebrate in particular, which are the photographs that have only recently been collected, the beats. And we'll see a number of these pictures scroll. And you took these pictures in right around 1958, which is the year I was born. How old were you? How did you meet these characters? Who are they? And how did you get involved?
Well, I was 17, going on 18, going on 17.
Yeah, right.
And then,
Sure.
and I had just dropped out of college after 1 month and a half of duty,
Yeah.
ROTC, wearing the uniform backwards and becoming a legacy at Coe College in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, the only people that would accept me because I was such a bad boy. Mm-hmm. So I came hitchhiking back through America.
Bad boy.
Bad. I was stealing cars and all this kind of stuff. I was an erstwhile son of a communist family.
Yeah.
And I wanted to steal from the rich and give to the poor.
Right.
and I did that for a while, and I was about ready to get kicked out of the world, so I went to college for a while and came back, and then met Turk, who you'll see on the walls if you haven't already seen, and Mary and Ambrose and Mike Stanley and Brother and Ambo Biba, a whole bunch of names. And these guys were not second generation, but a continuance of the Kerouacian things, infinitely not as talented, but equally as energized and certainly as mythologicalized in the sense of what their urgency was. Their urgency was to search, to learn, to burn, and to see if they can experience as many different ways of life within the incremental period that they lived. They were hungry.
Yeah.
And it was a button-down society then, and they were hungry to tear off the shirt. I think I'll do it right now. Do you mind?
You traveled. I thought he was talking about them, but he's talking about himself.
Always.
What? You traveled with him, though, right?
I traveled with him.
You lived with him for a while.
This group of pictures in the gallery, and thank you, Scott Thody, who put this together in the most exquisite way, because in fact, the gallery that we have over there looks just like the place where they used to live, which was the sub basement of the Sullivan Street Theater,
Right.
which was pre-Revolutionary War, and they had burrowed their way in brick by brick like Dumas, and it was right next to the Village Gate where Coltrane and Mingus and whomever else was playing, so we were living in beggar's heaven. And indeed, that was what the gallery looks like over there. Not quite beggars, but heaven. So they were my people, Turk and those guys. So I got along with them.
You
even
fell
though
in, right? You just
there was
fell
some
in.
kind of intuitive something or another, but it wasn't based on harmony. It was based on rage.
Were you taking pictures, though?
No, absolutely.
I mean,
Very
at first, that's how you got to know them. Is that how you got to know them? Taking pictures?
No, I got to know them through photographing them around and being on McDougal Street and so on like that and hanging out. And then I was, quote unquote, hired or asked to come on the trip by Robert Cordier, who's a a writer and stuff like that, and kind of a beat, but a little bit older than them, and he was
Right.
ostensibly going to be making a film. And I was sort of hired, even though I was 17, I had no professional discipline whatsoever, nor any
Right.
ambition. I was trained that the revolution was about to come, and I was working for the revolution.
Yeah.
I didn't have a career in mind. I was stuck with that later.
Yeah, sure, sure. There's nothing worse than a career.
Oh, I know. I've done all kinds of heinous things for it.
Yeah, really?
Oh.
You want to talk about that? No, I don't mean that. I don't mean in that way. I mean, you told me once that you make pictures all the time, or that you made pictures all the time.
I do.
Right? And early, before the Beats even, you back before all the society assignments and all that, you were making pictures of the Beats and pretty much everything, right? Everything you saw.
Yeah, everything I saw, and it continues today, you know. And in the 40 or 50 years that I am a professional and was a professional, I photographed everything. I'm curious about everything, so nothing was beneath me or above me or anything like that. I'm just alive. I'm just hungry. I'm hungry to experience, and the camera can translate these experiences in certain ways that other things can't.
Yeah.
Music can communicate in a way that a camera certainly can't.
Right.
Much more to do about rapture, but not quite to do about information. You know, so.
Tell us about the old pre-digital days. I know schlepping and setting up. I mean, it seems to me, and I don't know.
55 pounds of crap on your left hip made it go away. Now it's all artificial.
Okay, so, but you're doing a big setup job for years and years and years. You're carrying stuff in, you're doing a big setup, and you're making, you know, you've got flash bulbs and reflecting umbrellas. You're defining a space and a division. So you've got to also be learning about.
I have to be learning about context, about space, about analyzing how things are going to interface. You have to preempt the idea of where the action is going to come and go if you're in a journalistic mode. You know, in a way, you have to know everything before it happens. And you have to know it way beyond the picture editor, even though Kathy is a very good one, but many of them aren't that good.
When you say, yeah, but when you say no, what do you mean no? You're not talking about getting the shot or capturing the image. You're talking about a process.
Yeah.
You don't
know
what you're looking for, right?
The idea of triumph, in the sense of, I've got the greatest image that's going to beat everybody else down, is not in my head.
Yeah.
The idea is it possible for me, small, little me, with an experience as large as it is, to make a picture that somehow or another assimilates that experience and then has the miraculous transference to be able to be understood by many others? How do I enter into you, if that be the case, pull you through me, clicking all the way, so that we merge inside?
Right.
And that's empathy on the deepest primary level. And the camera is a tool, but actually an interloper.
But you didn't have that tool for years and years and years. You had that other set of conditions and contingencies.
The MIA-6 or the C330 or whatever.
So you orchestrated photographs. I mean,
many times I did.
You know,
many times they orchestrated themselves for me. Many times they didn't orchestrate at all, and they were failed.
Yeah.
Pictures, and I went away very sad.
And a lot of this came about just out of commercial work.
Commercial jobs. I mean, you mean the real commercial days of advertising and stuff like that?
Well, your commercial work. I mean, yeah, editorial.
See, I don't believe that editorial work is commercial work, because editorial work was Vanity Fair and all my lucky particularities was basically, I saw every assignment I had as a small grant to go to do something and see something that I hadn't experienced before.
Right.
I didn't care that much about the money, and I cared about production. I'm a high professional and stuff like that. But I would also pay attention to the criteria that a magazine might want to have in terms of their working population and their commerce.
Right.
And pay attention to those disciplines. But then there was always a secret inside me, which was ironic, which is that I was living in a world which is full of blasphemy. Because I was pure, so I thought.
You saw it.
I saw it, yeah.
So were you exposing when you started doing that? Were you exposing people? And what do you mean when you say blasphemy?
No, the blasphemy was that I was working concurrently and subversively to my professional world. What my real inner secret was not about what the magazine needed. It was about what I was seeing and how visceral and immediate and strange, astounding You know when you're a little kid and you go to the soda shop and you think it's the world and you say, Mom, it's so strange, that soda shop.
Yeah.
And it's just a soda shop.
Yeah.
But you're so small that it's a soda shop in its magnitude. So when you go off around the world as a photographer with that wonderful instrument which gives you license for curiosity, as you keep on expanding, you get bigger and bigger and bigger and more. Been there, done that, but I've never gotten to that place because I've never been there and done that. I'm just there and doing that.
All
Always.
the time.
Yeah.
All the time, right. I think one of the things what I found when I met Larry, when we met and began, we of course talked while we were taking the picture, right? Or the pictures, all the pictures. I've been photographed before because, I publish books and they'll send a photographer, and so I've got fairly comfortable with being moved about a little bit, turn, do, up, over, that kind of thing. That wasn't happening here. Something else was happening here, and also we were talking, we were carrying on this kind of conversation. I think I understood that Larry was from a generation that right above me, people I missed very much, people I don't know anymore, are hard to find, carrying the revolution in. From Vanity Fair, right? I mean, that was that time when we all understood not to trust the man, and that was a big part of we all, we don't really. I think we don't really think about it as much as we used to then. That thing. So I felt sympathy. I felt a sympathetic connection with an artist of a sort that I had been aware of when I was growing up, but of a sort that I don't find often in my life now, right? So you became a kind of you're something of a bit of a father figure for me. I mean.
Bit of
a father figure in some ways. I mean, you're
what's the word though?
Father.
Prophet?
Father.
Yeah, when you talk out that way, I get.
You're like my dad. But in an artistic way, I felt connected to. What I'm trying to say is that I felt connected to an impulse that felt very old, and one that I didn't recognize in myself in the world today so much. And so that was a part of how I came to be inside this thing and inside this connection and really inside this photograph, because I could trust in some way in the conversation. In a little while we'll talk about that some more. I still want to get more of the story, the background.
But the story, here's all kinds of photographers out in the blackness, the mire. And I have one thing which I keep on stressing, have all my life, and I keep on, and teaching at Bard and other places. As I get older, I get simpler in a way. And that is that there's no such thing as a good picture made of something which you haven't experienced. If you just go out to make a picture just for the sake of making a picture, that's not an evil sport, that's for sure. Nor is it anything that you should not do. It's all fine and dandy. But more than likely, the only reason that a picture lives in its own breath is because you yourself have been gasping in front of something which astounded you in some silent way or subtle way or bombastic way, no matter what. Something that has taken your gut out and churned it around and mixed it up. And you go, how is it possible? The question that you rise at when you photograph is it possible? And of course it's not possible to translate what's happening in your mind through a camera, but that's why we work, to make it possible. We work to change the world. By making a photograph, I take my world, I put it into a box of a world, and by doing so, I change the world maybe that much.
In the 1970s and on into the 80s, Larry made a heavy body of work involving a family named the Sabatines, Jean and John. And some of these photos are going to come by too. Their extended family and their friends from down the road in Martins Creek, Pennsylvania, which is where Larry went, what, 35 years ago, 30 years ago?
I've been at the farm for 42 years.
42 years to escape the city. And I think you met the Sabatines when you went looking to buy a used lawnmower, right?
It wasn't a photo shoot. No, but it was. I needed a lawnmower, and I didn't have any money, so he was.
And you were in some culture shock too, right?
Somewhat, yeah. No, and it was. I had a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
And it was a big farm with 9 buildings. They were all falling apart, and I had skills. I lived in lofts in New York, and I was pounding hammers and nails. I needed a lawnmower for less than $20, and John Sabatine advertised in the local, whoremaster's paper or whatever. And
right.
And I went down and I got one for 15, and it was a guaranteed to come back to, for another $10 to fix it, and another $10 to fix it, and another $10 to fix it. It was his form of mini larceny.
Right.
But I've always liked crooks, so I mean, coming from the underground in Turk and all kinds of other,
So
shenanigans.
you bought a $15 lawnmower on an installment plan.
On the installment plan to get
From
up
a
to
guy down the way,
to get up
right.
to 35, so.
Yeah, but you didn't know, right? I
But
mean,
I
you didn't know what you were
but
walking
they were
into, right?
fascinating people. Fascinating is a very bourgeois observation. They were funky.
Yeah.
They were wonderful. They were completely letting it all hang out. I mean, social graces was not a Marxist idea that I would combine the rich and the poor.
Right.
The rich wasn't definitely an idea coming out of my Marxism, coming out of any number of things, that I would photograph those guys and thinking delusionistically that they might disappear someday. I'll be like Ache and I'll collect them. They seem to have been, they're stronger now. Not quite so elegant,
The
though.
pictures, you mean?
No, the rich. But
Oh, the rich, yeah.
they're very strong. Not as elegant as they used to be,
Right.
But
Hardly anyone is.
I don't think
right.
so. Certainly, I'm not.
Yeah, but you wound up, when did you pull the, I mean, how did you get going with them? You wound up in about a 7, 8, 9 year off and on kind of close relationship with them taking pictures.
The Sabatines?
Yeah.
More like 15, 20.
15, 20 years?
Yeah.
So how did it begin? I mean, when did you decide you were going to bring a camera over?
Oh, a couple times over. I said I was a photographer. Hey, bring the camera, church.
Right.
Started the photograph. They liked it, and everything was fine.
So you would go over and set up and then what, hang out and kind of disappear
Yeah, I
into
wouldn't
the...
have to set up. I mean, just go down and, get high,
Yeah.
drink some soup, grunt and groan with Sabatine, and with John, get cursed at by Gene, et cetera, and
Right.
just make pictures, as it went along, So, simple.
Social Graces came out in 1984, and this is the first major collection, right? And so I imagine it pretty much changed your life, right, when that book came out. That's the first major book, right?
That's my first book, yeah.
Yeah.
It was well received.
Okay, but what I mean to say is that it opens up... I know the feeling. It opens up new kind... It moves you forward, right? The publication.
Made me nuts.
Did it? What happened?
I didn't know what to take a picture of.
For how long?
For years.
Yeah.
I kept on repeating myself. I was all self-conscious and
You're all
concerned.
fucked up, right?
And then, I was lucky to get Guggenheims and stuff, so I didn't have and I was married to a wonderful painter, Joan Snyder, at that time.
Right.
We were very happy, et cetera, et cetera.
You're starting a family.
Yeah, we were having a little family,
You're taking praying mantis pictures.
everything.
Lumber pictures.
Moved around, the 80s and
All that time.
all that stuff. A lot of things, yeah. But anyhow, yeah, I don't know. It moved along. It changed my life because I didn't know. It made me self-conscious. And also, in 84 or 78, I had the show at the Museum of Modern Art. In 84, the book came out. When I had the show and the Guggenheims, it screwed me up so badly because I was supposed to be an underground revolutionary. And all of a sudden, I'm getting a Guggenheim and an NEA and a show at the Museum of Modern Art. Oh, that's disgusting.
Well, was it to you? Was it disgusting to you, or were you afraid that it would be disgusting?
I had a double-edged mirror,
Yeah.
Which was cutting my throat in the middle.
Yeah.
Because it was like, on one hand, holy shit.
Yeah.
You know?
See, those are the days when you could sell out, right? So you're afraid of that.
I didn't want to sell out.
Right.
It wasn't a concern of mine, but I didn't want to.
Right.
I wasn't going to go into. I didn't have a career in mind. I really had revolution in mind. You
Yeah.
know? I mean,
Yeah.
crazy, right? I mean, when lofts were selling for $200 for the whole building, I was offered a loft building next to the Bond Street Theater, you know, for $13,000 for 6 floors in a back building. And I didn't have the money. And you know what? I'm glad I didn't take it.
Yeah.
Because I would have been a landowner and a taxpayer and a city guy, and I'd be. I would have been a millionaire, but I'd be a pig.
Okay, so boxing, runway, fish and wine, music, Hollywood. So, to some extent or another, right? When we talk about these things,
Yeah.
we might be talking about what we call your obsessions, right?
Most of my obsessions are about physicality. Well, empathy is physicality.
All right, here
and
we
I've
go.
always coined a phrase called sensual empathy, which is empathy usually is I know, I can read your face, I can read your books, I can read a whole lot of things about your context and stuff like that. I can find ways to piece back and forth inside the matrix of your being, you know, and see whether or not I, by association, share one thing or another with you, the empathized one. But for me, it's much more intuitive and swift and physical. It's like I can see weakness, I can see strength, I can see horror, I can see evil, I can see meanness, I can see joy, I can see generosity, and I have all of those things in me, including the meanness and the evil.
Yeah.
You know, and that's why the pictures are as they are, because they come off like sticking my hand. You know, in order to bear a colt, in order to find out whether the mare is pregnant in Lexington, Kentucky, and in places from around here, the doctor has to stick his hand and his fist all the way up the rear end to see how the uterus is going.
Yeah.
And that's how I photograph. It's a little sloppy, you know.
I don't want to talk about that yet. And the point I'm trying to make is that, or not the point, but the question I'm trying to raise is that at some point in all of this obsessive work, it's inside the moving, it's inside the physical movement. But it's also, I think it's a pursuit of pleasure. I think that, and this is something we started to talk about at that time.
We didn't talk about it. But I'm definitely involved with this pursuit of pleasure.
Yeah. But
It's important.
and I'm all for that. but what I meant was the pleasure in the experience of taking the picture.
That is part of the pleasure of living, really.
Yeah.
It's not just the cheesecake, it's the baking.
We're talking about an experience rather than a product. We're talking about
Right. Its product has never been a concern of mine. I mean, I made a lot of products. I have 39,000 prints in my goddamn barn, Jesus Christ. But you know, and of course you take the object, the product and stuff like that, and you print it as best as you can. I was a good printer, but not a great one, because I didn't have that kind of compulsive finickiness. I wanted to go out and play, basically.
Yeah.
I wanted to go out and build the barn. I wanted to get in the earth. I wanted to chop some trees. I wanted to hang out with the Sabatines. I wanted to make some more pictures. Life as a photographer, just as a photographer, even though I've done quite a bit of it, I think, is not necessarily my life. My life is a life as a physical person. You know, a life as a muscle. That's what I am. I'm simply a muscle.
Does this make sense? We're trying to move toward this idea of an experience. It's abstract, but it's contained in a physical realm. And then part of it, I think, for Larry is music. So music is a, constant. And I think you've been around music and you've been playing music for a very long time.
Oh, listen, I'll tell you a story. You want to hear a story, gang?
Yes.
My first memory was when I was in a bassinet on the floor in 1943. I was born in 41. My parents were communists, yes, but they were swing jive monkeys, man. They loved to go uptown and dance and carry on and drink and wear minks. And they had to leave the party because they kept on wearing those minks.
Yeah.
My mother famously said, "What's the fucking problem? That's the way everybody should live. That's what it's all for." And anyhow, I'm in the bassinet there, and,
Yeah.
and during those days, we had the blackouts in New York when Second World War. And I remember them dancing to Chick Webb, man, and dancing around, and the blackout was on, and the sirens were in the background, and my swirling feet of my parents, and me in the bassinet. And it's my first memory, and it's music.
You got your harmonica?
Yes.
You want to bring it out? Your harmonica?
I won't expose myself.
All right. You ready?
These damn tight pants make everything impossible.
Let's take a couple of minutes and look at pictures, and Larry's going to play the harmonica for a minute.
You can tell I come from the 60s.
Yeah.
This is happening, man.
Let's talk about the digital cameras for a minute, all right? Because that's how I experienced this whole thing. And you told me you were a holdout for a long time, right? You went for a long time without switching.
Not so long. I mean, I was a little bit. I mean, I wasn't. I was.
When you switched around
I
2009
wouldn't call myself a holdout because I was fascinated by it. I was, and it was a time. I got my first Canon 12 or 10 or whatever they are, whatever the numbers are. And quite frankly, I didn't know what I was photographing then. I had left Vanity Fair, or they had left me, or whatever. Advertising had not quite burnt me out, but almost. And I did that. It was a lot of fun, a lot of party, a lot of this, a lot of money, and a lot of soulless skullduggery.
Yeah.
Working with weak people with bad minds and terrible values. And that's success, my man. But they didn't kill me.
That's why I've avoided it for so long.
I know.
You know? I'm just as afraid of that stuff as you are, right?
Anyhow, the thing is that I was bereft of real impact and energy. I didn't know what to photograph.
Yeah.
My beautiful wife, Martha Posner, a painter, and I had a double show in Buenos Aires, and we was living across the street from the cemetery called Rigoletto, where they bury famous people and not such famous people and military people and Perón and whatnot like that. And not unlike Italy and Latin America and even Louisiana, they put bas-relief sculptures of the dead people on the thing. And I went into the cemetery, and it's all over the place. It's 5 or 6 acres, I think. And I just kept on bumping into these stone faces. Working with the little cameras like this, you can go macro and this and so on and so forth, zooming and any number of different kind of variants, And I found myself fascinated with, the life within the stone faces, their representation of the icon that was supposed to be bound under, and how the camera was so amenable to move in and out sensually within the sculpting of those identities. I said, wow. And I stayed in that cemetery most of the damn time. I hardly went to my show on Martha's. And I came back with pictures that are interesting.
Kind
and
of moving the camera in and out and around and
yeah,
about.
and you can go this way and that way. You're not beholden. You don't have to be 3 feet away like a rangefinder camera, etc. And it was slow, so it wasn't a question of these things are slow and they're a drag. But, it wasn't a question of that. So I've started on a project, and didn't think it was a project then, but it's called Stone and Flesh, where I'm photographing really, really close macro on real faces, and then the stone stuff I did and will do again, and some more, so as to see whether or not there's an equivalent life between the death and the life of things. What kind of, morality can we find in death and life? And how can that be translated in this silly little thing, you know?
Are you thinking about that consciously when you're taking the pictures, or are you moving the camera around?
This part of me, yeah.
You think about that all the time?
No, I'm not mortaling, but I do think about it, yeah. Look, I'm going to die someday sooner than I thought.
Yeah.
You know, I'm 74, and mortality really starts to move into your consciousness. I no longer want to change the world. I just want to hang on.
Right.
I wouldn't mind changing it a little bit more than I did already. I've contributed, Christ almighty. Proving myself is not an issue, certainly.
Right.
But I want to give as much as I can until I die.